potential in our county. It's not a public hearing or a workshop on any specific project. We will have a county presentation where we'll provide additional information covering things like traffic and road, potential impacts, water use, air quality, potential impacts to ratepayers, as well as other things like economic impacts. There will also be an opportunity for public comments or questions during the forum. We will be sharing a flyer as well online through our social media and on the county website, and that will include the information with the digital option for people who would like to join virtually. The meeting will be recorded, and after the recording, it will be transcribed with Spanish translation, and that recording will be posted online. I'd like to additionally provide an update about Lithium Valley. As many of you know, Lithium Valley is a significant opportunity for this region to lead in energy, mineral, and advanced manufacturing. And there's been a tremendous amount of work that has gone into this initiative over the last 3 years. We've also faced some challenges with things like litigation with one of our commercial opportunities with CTR's lithium project, as well as is in the market. Last year, I shared a...
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm listening to 2 meetings at once.
That's quite all right. I just wanted to make sure I was in the right one. Good afternoon, everyone. Mark, I hand it over to CDA.
Great. Thank you so much, Annalisa. Yes, I want to make sure I was in the right meeting as well. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think that Carrie has a PowerPoint presentation that will be guiding you through today. Are you able to share your screen, Carrie?
Yes, just getting it pulled up here.
Okay, no problem. Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year. We will be presenting to you updates on the implementation of our SB 1249 initiatives. I just want to remind everybody what the specific initiatives are that we'll be providing updates on. The first one is on statewide services. And again, this is an initiative that's really targeted on forming core programs for all of our AAAs, and then creating performance metrics to measure the quality and progress of those programs. Next, we have designation regulations, and this is updating the planning service area and the local area agency on aging designation criteria and processes. Next is the intrastate funding formula, so updating our intrastate funding formula. And then we also have an update on a new statewide website that CDA is creating. If you call in SB 1249, there is reference to increasing the awareness and engagement of aging programs throughout the state. And we hope that through the creation of this new website, we will create greater awareness of aging programs that exist throughout the state. And at the end of the webinar, we'll take any questions that you have. So we will start with statewide services, and presenting on this topic. Oh, I'm sorry. Timeline. Let me just quickly walk you through the timeline of SB 1249. I'll really kind of like speed over to where the 2 hash marks are on the timeline. All of the activities that occurred before, you're all well aware of this. The webinars that we held on each one of these topics, the feedback that we collected from you to formulate our thinking and really design the initiatives going forward. Where we're at right now is what we call the implementation phase. So we feel like we've got sufficient information to really start activities around each one of these initiatives. So that's the phase that we're in right now. And throughout the course of this year, and we'll have 3 more of these webinars, we'll be providing you with progress updates on each one of the initiatives. Next slide. Okay, so the first topic we will cover is statewide services. And presenting on this topic today is Ross Lalian, who is the research chief for the California Department of Aging. Ross.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time this afternoon. So I'm going to share a status update related to progress, and we're calling those core statewide services, as Mark mentioned. And we established a statewide services effort to promote service consistency statewide, identify potential service gaps, and also discover opportunities to improve efficiency and quality of services. So we at CDA have been working on developing several dashboards over the last couple of months to advance these core tenets. We're developing these dashboards with the goal of this being a helpful tool for you. So we're designing them in a user-friendly fashion, so it's not cumbersome to interact with or complicated to understand. We want you to be able to understand these tools quickly, and we hope that they're intuitive. So the first dashboard that we're going to roll out is what we're calling the timeliness dashboard. And you can go to the next slide, please, Carrie.
I'm sorry, we're not seeing any slides.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I
me
thought you were
either.
doing a live demo first, Ross. I stopped sharing.
Oh, right. Okay. No, that makes sense. I'm going to share my screen here in a sec. Actually, let me just share my screen now. Fingers crossed that the technology works. Are you guys seeing a data submission status dashboard?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the primary purpose of this timeliness dashboard is pretty straightforward. It's a consistent and comprehensive display of data submission status. So this first page here is what we call our summary page. So across the very top here, you're going to see a drop down for fiscal year and quarter. So as we accumulate data, there's going to be different fiscal years here and historic data. So you could select on the respective year and quarter of the data that you'd like to view. For now, we just have data for fiscal year 25-26 quarter one. So that represents July 1st, 2025 through September 30th, 2025. And so below that, there's three different submission statuses: blue, yellow, and orange here: on time, late versus delinquent. So if you hover over one of these buttons, a tooltip will pop up, and that'll kind of describe what we define as being on time versus late versus delinquent. So on time submissions are both attestation and data reports are completed by the due date. A couple important notes. For this first quarter, we did not factor attestation into the submission status. That's because it's a new process. We just introduced you to this process. So the statuses you see here are only based on submission of the data reports. But moving forward, the attestations will be factored into the statuses. And also, there's something else I want to point out. We didn't create this dashboard to call anyone out. It's important for us to have consistent definitions of what we consider on time versus late versus delinquent, and have a consistent view of data submission. And this promotes transparency. Just want to point that out. So that's the on time submission status. Then we have late, and that's when an attestation and our data report is completed past the due date. And then we have finally delinquent, and that's when the attestation and our data report is not completed. So those are the three submission statuses. You can get a quick kind of high level view of how many service areas are on time versus late, etc. And then below that, we have individual PSA related data. So if I use PSA 4 as an example here, if I hover over this blue button here, it's going to tell me that PSA 4 submitted these data on time. The due date for data submission for quarter one was October 31st, 2025. The data was submitted on October 30th, and the attestation was submitted November 12th. Again, that attestation is not being factored into the status for this first quarter. So it gets a high level, easy to understand view. The last thing I want to show you here is this line. This is data as of December 1st, 2025, refresh 5 out of 5. Essentially, what that's saying is that the data is refreshed once a week for 5 weeks after the due date. So the due date for data submission for Q1 was October 31st. We refreshed data November 3rd, November 10th, November 17th, November 24th, and then finally December 1st. And it's locked after that. So that's important for you guys to know as you view this dashboard, just to know when the data is actually final. So that's the summary page. I did want to show you one more page here. It's called the Days Late tab. And this is just a higher level quick view of days late data. So across the top here, the year drop down, quarter drop down is exactly the same. Then you see this big number that's average days late for the entire network. It's 26 here for Q1. When you kind of have this graph display, the x-axis is days late, the y-axis is number of PSAs, and you can just kind of drill down and get some themes potentially on days late data. And you can see how many days late data was submitted if there are any themes here. So this is another quick view, higher level view of the same data essentially. So that's our timeliness dashboard. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Here we can go back to the slide. I think I have one more slide to share. Thank you. So the timeliness dashboard and the other dashboards you see listed on the slide here, they're not going to be fully public. What I mean by that is that they're online tools, right? So theoretically, some can share the link with external parties and folks can view these dashboards. But we at CDA are not going to initially market these as tools for the general public. So to access the timeliness dashboard, the link will be included on the CARS system. So it's not going to be on CDA's website. And we're currently working on adding the link to CARS, and we should have that resolved within a couple of weeks or so. And we'll inform you when the dashboard is available. And we have our next update meeting with you in April, and we're planning to sharing 2 additional dashboards there. The expenditure data dashboard provides an overview of funding for the fiscal year. So that includes total allocations and expenditures by funding source, state and federal, program and PSA specific numbers, and then match funding reported and revenue generated from area plan activities. We're also planning on sharing the nutrition and caregiver services dashboard. And that's going to provide us with a view of units and clients served for those respective programs. So the first iteration of that dashboard was we do want to keep it relatively straightforward and focus just on units and clients served. So those are my quick updates. And thank you again for your time this afternoon. I'm going to hand it off to my next CDA colleague.
Great. Thanks, Ross. And yes, presenting on the next topic will be Sela Nua. She is our regulations analyst who's been working on all the regulations related to PSA and AAA designations. So Sua.
Hi, everyone. Like Mark mentioned, I'm Sela Nua. I'll be providing a high-level overview of the designation regulations we're developing as part of the 2030 initiative and what you can expect as they move forward. Next slide, please. All right, so to start, I want to ground us in the 9 designation-related regulations CDA is currently developing. These regulations fall into 2 main areas, AAA designation and PSA designation. On the AAA designation side, the regulations address how counties are defined, how AAAs are designated, and the circumstances under which a designation or grant agreement may be terminated or revoked. On the PSA designation side, the focus is on how planning and service areas are designated, how applications and changes are handled, and the process for adverse determinations and related notices. The titles shown here are intended to be plain language descriptions paired with the corresponding sections of the California Code of Regulations to help orient you to the scope of work underway. So we're not going into the substance of the regulations today, but rather providing just a high-level overview of what's coming. Each of these regulations will move forward through the formal rulemaking process, and there will be opportunities for AAAs to review the proposed language and provide input during public comment. Next slide, please. Okay. So now that we've walked through the scope of the designation regulations, I want to share our current thinking around timing. The regulations are being grouped into packages and are expected to move forward in phases rather than all at once. So this approach allows us to provide clearer, more focused opportunities for review and comment. In the first quarter of 2026, we anticipate moving forward with 2 smaller packages. One focuses on the definition of county, and another addresses revocation of AAA designation. Also spanning late Q1 into Q2, we anticipate a package that includes the core AAA designation regulation and the termination of AAA grant agreements. Finally, in the second quarter of 2026, we anticipate moving forward with the PSA-related regulations. So this includes designation, application, and changes to PSAs, as well as adverse determinations and related notice requirements. I do want to emphasize that this is an anticipated timeline. The sequencing and timing may shift as the work progresses, but this gives you a general sense of what we're planning and when you can expect opportunities to engage. Next slide, please. Okay, so public comment process. When a regulation is formally noticed for public comment, CDA will send an email notice. The proposed text and related materials will also be posted on the CDA website, and stakeholders can check the website for updates at any time. If you're not sure whether you're on the notification list or want to add additional contacts, you can email the regulations unit at the email listed on this slide to be included. Public comments should be submitted by email to the regulations unit inbox during the official public comment period. When sending your feedback, we ask that you please be sure to include the regulation tracking number and the title of the regulation in the email header to ensure your comment is associated with the correct regulation. How you can find that tracking number is that if you look at the top right of the regulation package, it'll be noted right there. All regulation notices, proposed text, and supporting materials will be available under the Laws and Rulemaking tab of the CDA website, which also includes an overall overview of CDA's rulemaking process in itself. Next slide. Okay, so just to close out, I want to briefly share what you can expect next from regulations. So the designation regulations will be noticed for public comment on a rolling basis rather than all at once. As each regulation is released, AAAs will have an opportunity to review the proposed language and provide formal input during the public comment period. Again, check the website. The website will give you those actual dates. And then updates and notices will be shared by email, again, posted on the website so you can easily stay informed. And if you have any questions regarding the regulation process, please feel free to send them to the regulations unit. With all that being said, that concludes my portion, and I'll turn it to the next speaker.
Great. Thank you so much, Stella. Our next speaker will be Andy Sachs, our Assistant Deputy Director for Administration, who will be providing an update on the interstate funding formula. Andy.
All right, so I'm going to quickly go over where we are. Well, if you could go back to the last slide first before we get into that. Sorry, thanks. So I just want to go over where we are and what's next when updating the IF. I'm also going to show some sample allocations with the proposed new formula. I'd also like to make note that this is a priority of the administration. We're working with agency and the governor's office on enactment. None of this that I'm going over today is new information. We're just reviewing where we are and where we're going. So, Carrie, now you can go to the next slide. So the process for changing the interstate funding formula is as follows. We are going to submit the proposed IF to ACL for approval. Then we'll be updating state statutes to reflect the updated formula. Then there's engagement and planning with stakeholders on forthcoming allocations. I want to stress that we will be engaging with stakeholders and all of you every step of the way. And then finally, we will be updating using and applying the new IF. Now, before we go to the next slide, I just want to give an introductory to it because I know once I show it, none of you will listen to the words coming out of my mouth. So I just want to let you know what I'm going to be showing is I've broken it up 11 AAAs at a time on each slide. It's going to be the current allocations with the current IF, the proposed allocations with the proposed IF, as well as it'll show the increase or decrease that each AAA would be getting and the 3-year average of unspent dollars. So I'll leave it up there for about 30 seconds each. And like I said, the first slide will be PSAs 1 through 11, then 12 through 22, and 23 through 33. So Carrie, you can go to the next slide now, and I'll leave this up for about 30 seconds, and then we'll go to the next one.
None of these are appearing, Andy, if you're showing them now.
You're not seeing the slide that says if allocations?
I'm seeing it.
Okay, I see it on my side.
I see it as well.
Okay. So we're
Play.
on the second group right now.
Okay,
Also
sorry guys,
play,
it's
look at
me.
the view. Okay. Thank you, Andy.
And I just want to remind everyone, you've seen this before. This is just formatted differently. All right. Well, thank you, Carrie. That's all for the F.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. And we will go on to our last topic, which is the new statewide public-facing website. And presenting will be Connie Nakano, who is our Assistant Director for Strategic Planning. Connie.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. Just giving you a quick update about the statewide website. I think we spoke to you guys a little bit about it in our previous meeting. If we can go to the next slide. So we mentioned we're developing a statewide website. This will be the start to one point entry where folks can begin to get their aging, disability, and caregiver information. As you guys are familiar that we have the printed aging resource guide, and this really complements the online portion of it where everybody can go to a centralized website and start gathering their information. So development was guided by a lot of user research. We've done a lot of focus on plain language, accessibility, and also multilingual access. We're anticipating to launch this in May with current work. Right now, we're focusing on the website structure. We're doing usability testing and also looking at a lot of the analytics on the back end in terms of how we're structuring the website, the word choices that are being used, and also the different categories that folks are seeking. So an update in terms of the name that we'll be using for the website, if we can go to the next slide. So like I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of research that was done. We surveyed about 9,000 Californians, which included older adults, people with disabilities, and caregivers from urban, rural, multicultural communities, and it was also conducted in 7 languages. AgeWell California was one of the names that resonated the best. It consistently tested as a clear, inclusive, and well-suited for long-time use in terms of a name. So that will be the name that we'll be using in terms of directing folks to a website to get information. Next slide. And then we wanted to also give you guys an update. Last time we spoke about also wanting to include a component that we called a provider directory that would take information from your directories and be able to put it all into one aggregate directory. But after hearing a lot of your feedback, we kind of stepped back a little bit and wanted to spend a little bit more time, taking back your feedback. What we're doing it now is we're changing it into, we're calling it an ecosystem analysis. So we really want to do a little bit more analysis and work with you guys as partners and take a look at your existing, the directories, the tools, and the information that's out there. And what's the best tool for us to put together that we can layer on top of the website to make it more robust so that folks can really use it more as a self-serve and get more information. And that's our goal, is that we'll be consulting and working with you guys very closely on developing what that approach looks like. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Is after that last conversation when we talked to you guys about wanting to launch the provider directory alongside the website, we are taking a little bit more time in that. And that's the updates that I have for the statewide website and also the provider directory.
Great. Thank you so much, Connie. Appreciate the updates. Let's see, Carrie, could you take down the slides for a second? We'll go ahead and go into Q&A now. And I'll start with the comments in the chat. It sounds like on the first topic, statewide services and the new data submission dashboard, that there's a lot of concerns about system issues, your local systems being able to accept inputs and then upload them to CARS. And we would love to talk to you about those issues to see if there's anything we can do to help. I know it sounds like, Lee, you say that you've been in contact with our data folks on this issue. So yeah, if you are experiencing those kind of issues, we definitely want to know about that. As Ross says in his comments, we can look at giving you the ability to make a notation if it is a system issue that's preventing you from uploading your data timely. And then if there's any other issues we can help with that may be an impediment to a timely data upload, please let us know. We'd love to hear those. Were there any other questions on the statewide services topic that haven't been answered in the chat that anyone wants to raise now? If so, please raise your hand. Lee, I see you have your hand raised.
Thanks. My question is actually around the data and the collection of it. Did you want to get to that, or did you want to? Oh, okay. So just for Ross or whomever, kind of other than the dashboard, what happens with the data that, well, we're trying to report? What happens with it? I mean, is it used to inform programming or funding? Could we use it in some way to maybe issue a report on all the services that CDA and the AAA network provide across the state? I just think there's some richness there that we're not capitalizing on, at least from what I'm seeing, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I can answer that, Lee. For the data submission, I think our goals ultimately are to give regular performance updates to key stakeholders, such as California Health and Human Services Agency, the governor's office, to inform them about all the great work that you're doing and the progress that we're making on our programs, and also where the gaps are, where opportunities exist to improve. So I think, the more timely we can get the data, the more frequently we can report it up to our key stakeholders, the better position we'll be to make strong arguments to either further invest in our programs or get additional support for our programs.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure. Looks like Kim has a question.
How you doing? Kim Fogel, Alameda County, PSA 9. What if your PSA has some questions or issues with the proposals for the IFF?
You are welcome to submit those to the CA 2030 inbox. I will say that at this point, we have gone through a very robust process of receiving feedback. So what you see on your screen really is final allocations. But if you do have any sort of technical questions about the methodology, we'd be happy to answer those. But yeah, if you could submit those to the CA 2030 inbox, we'd be happy to review those.
Is that CA 2030 at Aging? What is that exact address?
Yeah. Could Carrie post that in the chat?
It'll be at the end of the slides, but I'll put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. Maggie.
Hi there, thank you. I'm using my phone, so I'm a little more inept than usual. Appreciate the update. The question, the funding formula to me is so rock that I don't have any questions about that. I think we'll see how it plays out. Again, it's very difficult to change the funding when there's no new funding coming into the pot, because it does pit those of us getting money against those of us losing money. And I just think it's a real inappropriate way to go about trying to improve the system without new funds. So I think it's crazy making. But my comment or my question is more a little bit on the next piece or the first piece, which was the data dashboard. You showed us that an example of delinquency. And again, I'm on my phone, but were there other elements that you also showed us that I missed for other things that will be on that data dashboard? Because I think starting a new data dashboard to share with constituents and stakeholders with that terminology and making the most important thing we do, getting our reports in on time, as a measure of competence or success,
I'm
I
not,
think is troublesome. I'm not
you
done.
cut out a
Sorry.
little bit. You cut out a
Oh,
little
I'm
bit.
sorry. Yeah, I did my life and internet up here in the Redwoods. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so I'm concerned that we are putting our best foot forward together if this is a partnership and not, I mean, if 30 or whatever 19 PSAs are delinquent, it might have something to do with the system versus our behaviors. And Clay, I think, made that comment in the chat. And many of us are having trouble with data methodology and everything. You're going to have problems with our reporting. And so I just encourage us not to, roll out as this new thing of doing this together, something that shows that our system is totally messed up, not just from our end of being able to get you data in time, but from the systems that we're using to bring that data together. And all you need is a staff person to retire, and you're going to have some kinks in things for a while as new people are learning. So I just think we should be more positive in the kind of data we put out there.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. And Ross, did you want to respond to any of Maggie's comments?
Yeah, sure. I think so. Just one important point that comes to mind, it's not going to be public, fully public, not yet anyway. So we're not going to roll it out publicly. And we could talk about maybe some of the wording, Mark, delinquent. Maybe we're not like married to that respective word. But Maggie, I think your first piece was, there's other pieces of this dashboard. I'm happy to meet with you maybe separately, because there's oftentimes data submission status late. And we're hoping, right, that things can trend the right direction and we have more on time. But yeah, there's other pieces to it as well, and I'm happy to meet with you, Maggie. We'll go over those.
Great, thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to Clay.
I wanted to elevate what I put in the chat, and that is just if we only have 5 out of 33 AAAs that are submitting on time, I think we have a much bigger issue than, AAA diligence or competency. There's systemic problems. I know for us, for example, after we thought we submitted on time, it took us 5 days even to get an error report on our data. So we were late just with that. So my question is, is CDA doing anything to work with AAAs and providers to address why the system isn't working rather than just identifying who isn't? And I think we need a group approach, not an individual PSA approach. The problem seems pretty widespread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that, part of creating a dashboard, really creating any dashboard, is to identify, issues, problems, and also best practices, right? So, if there is a widespread error rate, if there are system issues, we want to know about those, and we definitely want to understand them and see where possibly CDA could be of assistance. And, looking at those who are submitting timely, is there something that they're doing? Have they figured out a fix for a particular problem that could work for other AAAs as well? So a lot of this, what I would say, is kind of a discovery process, right? Really trying to understand the problems and then provide solutions. So this isn't about blame or shame. It's really more about understanding and seeing how we can improve. And Ross, anything you wanted to add?
I think that's spot on, Mark. Yeah, I think I mentioned that we're not going to call anyone out with these, like the PSA specific PSA data. But I think one important aspect of this is having consistency, right? We're all looking at the same data. We have consistent definitions. Mark's spot on. It's not public for a reason right now, because it's the discovery phase. Great way to put it.
So I just want to reiterate, there is an inherent problem here. We're seeing that with all the consistent comments people are making, in the chat, and again, the numbers just jump out, reporting problems. So I hope we can have that follow through and be proactive rather than wring our hands like we seem to have been doing for the past year about this. With we all need to get together and figure out what those solutions are.
Agreed. Tracy.
Thank you. I have comments in two areas, and I would be happy to forward an email to confirm. I was checking with my data guy and, texted and said, hey, didn't we submit on time and had trouble with RTC? And he sent me screenshots where we had everything in by the 29th and RTC was not able to resolve on their end until the 4th. So more than happy to forward that. I do want to comment on the intrastate funding formula. We've been told that we've seen this before. From my perspective, I agree. I think it was with Maggie. I'm part of an association, so I don't want to be pitted against each other. The swing in what our PSA would receive, the first iteration of the projections, we saw plus something like 700,000, and now we're down 900,000. So we're looking at a $1.6 million swing in expectations. I do have very substantial concerns about any AAA receiving such a cut. I mean, on our end, that's looking at 100,000 plus meals. And I don't know how to just cut services. It feels to me like changes have to incorporate some sort of gradual change. So, but I really did want to comment that I didn't know today if we would be seeing if the allocations we saw last time would be final or not, because I felt like we didn't have a good chance to discuss it at our session last time. So those are my comments and those are my concerns. I am happy that you're giving some consideration to how we work together on the shared statewide database. Thank you.
Right. Andy, Nicole, any comments you wanted to make to Tracy's comments?
No, I just one of the questions in the chat was just regarding the data, and these allocations are point in time based upon a 33 PSA AAA network based upon the most recent data that we have. So these will change between now and 29/30 when we intend to implement, and we will do the gradual 2-year implementation plan where it'd be half of the allocation change year 1 and then the full allocation in year 2. And we can certainly continue to provide those updated projections as we move through this process so that you can see annually what those projections are looking like as the data changes.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. And we have Elise next.
Hi there. I had a question that I got part of the answer. So when is the interstate funding formula expected to take place? Do we have a date or is that still being, 2030? Okay, thank you. The other piece, Mark, is if we could get CDA to speak with, we have GitCare and we pay quite a bit for it. And I know Kelty was actually working with us, and I saw the emails because I looked for it as well. My data person, Carmen Matty Cervantes, was working directly with Dan Birmingham, and she did that because we were late the first quarter, we were late the second quarter, and it was all due to the data, how it was uploading. It would cause errors. Everything looked good. So we have the documentation, and it says, no, we wouldn't hold that against you and all that, but the amount of time that it's taking to fix it is excessive. So if there could be someone, I can only speak for GitCare, but if we could have somebody connect so that we can identify what's causing the data to get changed while it's being updated. It should be just a straight, I'm not a techie person, so I don't know all the intricacies, but to me, it should be something forward. So
Yeah, I think, from the perspective of technical assistance, having somebody from our data team, maybe on a call with you and GetCare or other consortia systems could be helpful, because there's something that we can do on our side to, help the transfer be more successful. Happy to do that. Yeah.
That would be greatly appreciated. And I know I'm not the only county with GetCare, so I guess all the PSAs with GetCare had the same problem. So maybe we can have a group meeting, but obviously something isn't properly transferring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Annalisa.
Hi, thank you, everyone. First, I just want to commend you. That's an amazing name. I'm looking forward to seeing how the website rolls out. and partnering with you all on that. The second thing, in terms of the timeline, if you wouldn't mind just going back to that, because I think I missed it. I was wondering, in terms of the anticipated submissions packages, the reasoning of the order in which certain packages are being submitted. I want to make sure that when we are responding, that we have the full kind of overview, and receiving bits and pieces. I don't want it to become maybe cumbersome for CDA, or us not to provide the appropriate observations or feedback depending on the packages. So just wanted to understand a little bit about that. And then finally, I just wanted to say hello. I see Faye Gordon here. Congratulations. We're so incredibly excited to have you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Annalisa. That's so kind. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Carrie, could you bring up the slide in the slide deck that is for the designation packages and the timelines when those packages
Yeah,
would be?
let me get back to that slide.
Yeah. Great, thank you. So in terms of the flow of the packages, the first one is definition of county. Basically, it's defining a local unit government to really mean a county. So that would be units of government. And then, of course, tribal organizations are also a federally eligible entity to apply for a designation as a unit of government. The second package is going to deal with revocation of AAA designations. So should a county apply to be a AAA and there's an existing provider in place, what does that process look like in terms of revoking that existing AAA designation, and then the county having the ability to assume that status. And then the third package is really the process of designating new AAAs and then termination of any existing AAA agreements. Package 4 is everything, as Sela previously said, related to planning service areas. So I think that when you see the text of this, it'll probably make more sense in terms of what's occurring and what the processes are. And certainly, you can reach out to us if there's any technical questions you have regarding the language or the intent.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think we had, as a body, submitted a question specifically to the designation or redesignation and right of first refusal around policy. I don't believe we have seen that answer. We can certainly send it again. The second piece is, if I recall correctly, the timeline is to designate a planning service area before a AAA application would happen, right? And so I think that my confusion is why prioritize a revocation and not the actual designation of a PSA before the AAA process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So what you're saying is, why not have the PSA come first and then followed by the AAA piece? And I think really it was just a matter of the timing of when we started working on these packages, and kind of like when we had sufficient information really proceed with it. So I think it was really just more of a timing issue on our part. I think what you're going to find is that, at least in terms of process, both are very similar. You'll see a similar process for applying to either create new PSA as you would with applying to establish a new AAA. So there's a lot of sort of parallel between the two. But yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. And we will Yeah, if we haven't responded to the question about the de-designation criteria or de-designation process, we'll definitely do that in our FAQs.
Great. I appreciate it. We'd be happy to resend it again. And thank you for that background. That's helpful. I'm hoping that, well, let me ask you this. From the packages submitted and the feedback requested, what is the timeline for comment and then for response? And is it all, although it's Q1, Q2, Q3, however that looks, will there be an opportunity to see everything in case we need to go back and adjust or reframe based on new information that we might have? For example, revocation of AAA designation will also have effects to adverse determinations, changes in designation, and the criteria and application process.
Right. Stella or Brandy, did you want to address that, like the time frames around comments and then, what the OAL process looks like?
Yeah.
I can,
Oh, go ahead, Brandy.
yeah, I'll provide some information, Sela, and then I do have one question for you. But the way that the process works is to a very large degree outside of CDA's hands. This process and the timing is set by the Office of Administrative Law. So when we submit one package, for example, the package 1, there is a set public comment period. It's set in statute. And this is my question for you, Sela. Is it open for 45 days? Is that right?
Correct. Open for 45 days. So once that publication date comes, you will have 45 days from then to submit your comments or any questions that you may have on the package itself.
And then ultimately, after that public comment period, the documents go back to OAL. CDA does respond to each comment, but that is when the regulation becomes final. And so we would then be done with package 1, but it's after the public comment period. But I understand your question to be, once we have the public comment period for package 1, and then we get down to package 4, can we go back to package 1? And that is not the way the state rules work. So again, this is a process that is governed by a separate entity and by statute. So I hope that I answered your question.
You did. Thank you so much, Brandy. I would just suggest and recommend we maybe review the timeline just to make sure that we have opportunity to actually make meaningful comments and provide feedback for CDA for the execution of the implementation of the packages.
Yeah, and I do want to assure you that what you saw in the webinar last August regarding the PSA and AAA designation processes and criteria aren't going to be different. So, I would really encourage everyone to take a look at that PowerPoint again, see if you have any concerns about that. The regulations really are just memorializing what's contained within that PowerPoint. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect any large surprises. There might be some technical updates you'll see. For instance, there are references to notifying, us by fax for certain things, or us notifying you. We're updating that for current technology, such as sending emails. But by and large, the way that you see the process is laid out is what you'd see in the regulations.
I appreciate that. If I have anything further, I'll follow up via email. Thank you.
Great. Let's see, can you take down the slides again? I just want to see if anybody else has their hands raised. Yeah, I see Lee has his hand raised.
Thanks. Mine is on the IFF. So we will be issuing RFPs for the next 4-year cycle in a couple of months. And given that in the case of San Mateo, we're going to have a 14% reduction in our funding. And I was wanting to be open and transparent to the potential bidders that in the 4th year of the contract, it would go down at least to 7%. And then thereafter in 2031, it would be 14%. Are there allocation, this is a Nicole question, allocations determined yet so that we can know percentage-wise the expectation would be this of that 14%, this much would be in nutrition, this much would be in supportive services, et cetera, to let those potential bidders know?
Yes, we do have the allocations at that level. What we've provided thus far is the rolled up total allocation. I do want to be very mindful and careful because as we move through this process, any changes in designation can change those allocations. Those are based on data today, that's based upon the network today. So I hear you loud and clear, looking ahead, wanting to plan ahead. I do want to be careful because that it's not set in stone if the designations change, and even if the data changes, if data swings any direction in a meaningful way, it could change as well.
Thank you.
Maggie.
Yeah, I mean, I hear everyone's going to move up here, so we may get all the money next time you question. About the three pieces. Oh, the regulations. The question about the regulations, by doing them in these different packets, I appreciate that because having us look at everything at once is going to be a lot. However, one concern I might have is that as these things interact with each other, or I just hope somebody's looking very closely to make sure that we're not putting something in the fourth packet that goes against what's in the first packet, as an example, that there's that consistency. And we're not going to be able to do that because by the time the fourth packet comes out, the first packet will be done. And having looked at regulations a lot, there are times where those things occur where it's hard to keep it all straight and something will happen. Anyway, that's just my concern about these packets. I understand I don't know a better way to do it, but my concern would be that something gets lost or missed somehow.
Yeah, definitely hear you, Maggie. And that's something that, our legal staff and Cella are keeping a keen eye on. We will be cross-referencing and ensuring that there is consistency across all the packages. The other thing that I want to remind folks, which is another sort of like process piece with this, with the regulations, we're updating things in regulations that only, that absolutely have to be in regulations. So there's certain process pieces like due process and, the general application process, timeframes for submitting certain documents to CDA. A lot of the details that, reside behind this will be in policy and program memos that will also accompany this, and you will have a chance to review all of those. I think those pieces you'll probably be most interested in because it really gets into the details of what are the criteria, what's adequate supporting documentation, things of that nature.
Right.
But absolutely,
yeah, it'll address that clarity issue too, because
yes,
oftentimes I can read the same regulations with other people and there's interpretation breaches, so to speak, if people not reading it. I have subcontractors who don't read the regulations the same way we do, which is problematic. So thanks.
Yeah, totally hear it. Great. Joe.
Yeah, thank you. Nicole, just to follow up, I appreciate what you said about the potential for designation changes could change the formula. With that, a request made, I think, when this first came out, can we get a breakdown of the funding per county for the multi-county jurisdictions? I'm getting lots of questions locally. And so when you have a, simple, reduction or an increase, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to apply equally across, say in my case, 5 counties. And when you have large population centers that could usurp a big chunk, up to half, if not more of those funds, the smaller counties who've been depending on it are concerned. If you had a boundary change and one of those larger counties was removed, it would have significant impact. So if there would be a way that we could look at the funding formula for multi-county jurisdictions on a per county basis, we'd be better able to communicate with the constituents. And I think CDA would appreciate that as well. We could communicate what these potential changes mean. As it sits right now, it's very veiled, and it doesn't evoke a lot of trust for me in the community when I'm trying to talk about potential changes when I can't answer what practically that would look like. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, I've noted that. We could definitely supply that. No problem.
Great. And Clay.
Yeah, that would be really helpful for us too. So that would be great, Nicole, if we could get that. My question is going back to the core services issue, and I just wonder how that is going to deal with the fact that there are more, federally, there are an extensive list of mandated services that we have to provide that are not being included in California's core services. So is there going to be something to balance that out or clarify that even though, service X is not considered a California core service, it's nevertheless a mandated service that all of us will be providing?
Yeah, great question, Clay, and point. And I seem to recall, I think we did address this on the August webinar as well when we were talking about this topic. This had come up, which is everything like everything in the Older Americans Act, that state as a mandated service you were required to provide, right? Like under your MOUs, you have to provide mandated services, no question about it. Core services, really, that's, kind of the reason why we're establishing those is that these are programs that we're at this point calling out to design performance metrics around. So these are the ones that, by and large, all of you are providing. They are mandated services. And, this is where a lot of our money is going towards. And these are ones that we want to raise up to our stakeholders. Here's how we're doing. Here's how many meals we're providing. Here's where we see gaps in services. Here's where we could need more help. So that's really the whole idea of core services. It's not to say that the core services are the only services you have to provide or they're the only mandated services. Absolutely not. It's just ones that we're raising up for additional focus when it comes to performance measures. But yeah, under current law, you are required to provide those mandated services.
Yeah, and then as follow-up to that, I just wonder how that compromises the non-core mandated services. Like Ombudsman, we all know has been underfunded for a long time, but by removing Ombudsman from being a core service, it makes it harder to make the case locally or statewide that Ombudsman needs a funding augmentation. So I don't expect you to have an answer for that, but I think it's important that we dialogue about the unintended consequences of the designation of some things as core services and other things not as core services.
Yeah, and I'll address the Ombudsman because that did come up in the Ombudsman conference when I was presenting on this topic. I would argue that actually Ombudsman is leading the way on core services. The reason why it wasn't raised as a core service is because it is so data rich right now with very well-defined performance measures. I would say that, if you want to look at a model of what we really want to achieve with core services, look at the Ombudsman data dashboards. They're just phenomenal. Absolutely. But yeah, so that's why they weren't called out because they're already there, they've already arrived. Yeah, and great point, Clay. This is not to discredit any of the other mandated services or even discretionary services. You as AAA directors know exactly where your focus needs to be and, what services you have to provide and the quality to which you need to provide them. But again, raising the whole idea of the core services and the performance metrics is really to raise this up to our stakeholders. We know we spend most money on nutrition. People ask us that question all the time. We have to have really good solid data and data dashboards to be able to provide to them. Same thing with, caregiving and information assistance. So that's why those are really raised. But yeah, it's not to mean that the others aren't important. They're very important. We just, get questions about this a lot. So we need good data dashboards to support them. Great. So I don't know if there's any other questions in the chat we haven't answered, but we are just at time. So any questions that we haven't answered, we'll go through the chat and maybe provide those in an FAQ as a follow-up to this call. Carrie, could you put the slides back up? Great. And so this is really the conclusion of our first of 4 quarterly meetings on SB 1249 implementation updates. Our next meeting will be held on April 7th. And in the meantime, as I mentioned before, please go ahead and send any additional questions or comments you have to the CA 2030 inbox. The email address is right there. And just want to thank you all for showing up today and for actively engaging in this webinar. Thank you all so much. Take care. Bye.